guys, happy Saturday. I only have about 30 minutes here, so I'm going to answer some general questions that people tend to ask. So the first one is, where do I start? That's a great question. First of all, you're here, which is awesome. So you're in a place where you can get a lot of questions answered. And make sure you check out the files. Make sure you check out the previous videos and the topics that I've posted. Also, check out my website because I have a blog that answers a lot of these questions. There's like recipes on there. There's blogs on where do I start, what diet is right for me, how do I figure this out, how do you become your own health detective, all these sorts of different things. Those are on my blog. If you don't like to read, I also have an awesome podcast, the Tiny Fit Diva podcast. And you'll hear me blab a lot about topics I'm passionate about, but also you get the opportunity to listen to a lot of really cool interviews from really smart practitioners that drop a lot of knowledge bombs. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you subscribe. I drop a new podcast every Monday. So again, that's the Tiny Fit Diva podcast. So make sure you check that out. But in terms of where do you start, I really tell people you have to figure out your personal nutrition. So the first step to that is 100% across the board. It doesn't matter if you're struggling with hormones, autoimmunity, if you're struggling with gut health, if you're struggling with fatigue, if you're struggling with acne. The very first step is to get rid of processed foods and to learn how to cook your own food and try to go real food. When I talk to my clients, I just say eat real food. And I mean, if you think about it and you just sit with that for a minute, you know what that means, right? Like you pull something out of the closet and it's in this bag, like that's not real food. You pull an apple out of the refrigerator, that's real food. Like we all intrinsically know, like our heart knows, right? That like what is good for us and what isn't. And if we know, like we get so wrapped up in counting calories and measuring our food and restricting and dieting and all this stuff, when really it just comes down to listen to what your body already knows. Listen to what it tells you. Listen to that little voice inside of you that says, grab that handful of nuts and eat the crap out of them and don't worry about the fat content. Versus, well, they have 300 calories and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to eat a little, frozen dinner that's 150, but it's got all these chemicals in it and preservatives and all this different stuff. Okay, so my first step for everybody is to eat real food. Now, I want to make sure that you guys know that when I say this, it's not without compassion. I went through this myself. I know that it's difficult. I know that not everybody is cold turkey. I know that some people are going to take steps. We took steps. We're still taking steps. We're constantly learning about things that we can do that are better. But you have to be mentally willing to go to that hard place because it is hard and there's no way around it. If you want to get healthy, if you want to have a better lifestyle, if you want to have more energy, it's hard to make that change because certain foods are addicting, certain lifestyles are addicting, and flat out, you're comfortable where you are. If you weren't comfortable, you'd figure out another way to live your life. So maybe you're here because you're starting to get to that place. Maybe it's gotten to the point where it's so uncomfortable and so painful for you to keep living the way you're living that you're like, I got to join this group and I got to figure out what's what. When the pain of staying the same is bigger than the pain of change, that's when change happens. So if you're not at that point, you're going to have to like push through. If you are at that point, then welcome. And it's going to be painful for another couple weeks. But usually the withdrawal, the mental overwhelm from making the changes, all that painful stuff, usually that goes away within 1 to 2 weeks. And so you're fine. And then cooking your own food becomes just as easy as pulling something out of the pantry. So that is always where I say where to start. People are like so incredibly overwhelmed. There's 1,000 different diets out there. And I just say, calm down. If you haven't learned how to eat real food yet and you don't know what that means, then just look in your closet. And if it's all boxes and bags and you don't have a lot of produce in the refrigerator, start making changes to step-by-step work on that. There's so many resources out there. There's so many recipes, but you ultimately know. Like, I don't ever want to talk down to you. I don't ever want to act like, you don't already know this because you do. So I'm just reminding you that you know what this means. And the first step is to always eat real food. My mom actually came over the other day. It was interesting. She was like, Kylene, what would you say to somebody if they needed like the most the two most important things to change in their nutrition. Like if you had to dial it down, what would your two recommendations be? And the two biggest life-changing things that I could think of when I was talking to her was if you eliminate gluten-filled grains, and it doesn't matter if you have a documented sensitivity or allergy or not, they have been scientifically shown that it is inflammatory, it crosses your blood-brain barrier, it causes damage to your mucosal lining, it increases markers that are not good. And so if you're looking for ultimate health, you do want, that is something flat out, whether you feel like you have a reaction to it or not, that you don't want in your diet. And I have never, ever, and I've been doing this for several years now, I have never, ever had someone that has eliminated gluten from their diet and not seen some sort of positive benefit. So it affects everybody in different ways. It could be energy, it could be skin, it could be poop, it could be, gut health, it could be all sorts of different things. But yeah, for sure, that's the number one. Number two is sort of what I was talking about with where to start. And number two, one that I think is going to be like the greatest impact on your health that you could possibly do is figure out how to eat somewhere between 4 to 7 cups of vegetables every single day. I know, it seems so overwhelming, right? But every single meal should be vegetable based. So whether that means it's a side or whether it means that it's the meal itself, or like at dinner, like I'll give you an example. We make this really delicious paleo shepherd's pie. There's like 2 or 3 vegetables in that dish, right? So that's easy. It's like a casserole that's like all put together. Or maybe throw a bunch of stuff in the crock pot and it's like a meat dish, but there's like a ton of vegetables in there and it all cooks together. So those are easy ways to do it. It doesn't have to always be time consuming, but that would be like, if I had to choose 2 things that would make the most dramatic impact and you couldn't do anything else, it would be to eliminate gluten grains and to increase your vegetable intake to 4 to 7 cups a day. And within that 4 to 7 cups, try to have as much variety as you can. Try new vegetables. Don't be eating the same 3. I mean, let's be honest, because we've all been guilty of it. Broccoli, asparagus, and Brussels sprouts are like the go-tos in my family, right? So we're really making an effort to increase variety. We recently actually, I'm going to tell you this amazing vegetable that we recently discovered. It's called sunchokes. Holy crap, you guys. You cut those in half, you fry them in a pan with like coconut oil, and then you bake them. I think my husband will have to tell me because he's been doing it. Those are amazing. We literally cannot stop eating them. They're so good. And I Googled them the other day, and they're like incredibly good for you. And they have tons of nutrients, of course, like every vegetable. It's a root, by the way. So really incredible. And it tastes just phenomenal. I can't even, it's sort of like a fry, kind of tastes like fries, which is great because I can't eat fries. But it's not, it's hard to explain. It's like crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. It's amazing. You guys have to try sunchoke. So a lot of variety. And the reason this is because it's hard. It's really, really hard to get nutrient variety in our diet for so many reasons. One, we don't eat enough variety of vegetables, so we're limiting ourselves. But even within that, if you're getting all this variety, our soils are so depleted, it's just difficult. The nutrient density in vegetables is not the same as it was 60 years ago, flat out. So trying to get as much variety as possible. So there was something else I wanted to mention, and we were just, time. Okay, so this is another one. People come up and constantly, another struggle that I hear is that people are struggling with time to do stuff. To me, my husband just got home. To me, this is 100% a mental excuse. Because if you have time to get on Facebook and email somebody to ask a question, or you have time to make a post about how much time you don't have, you have time. So there have been studies that, you can go into your iPhone and check your settings. If you go into your settings, and it will show you how much time you spend on social media or different apps. Your mind will be blown. If it's like 3 or 4 hours a day that you're spending on this, then you can reorganize your time and have food and have time to prepare some meals. But that being said, I do know that there is this concept, because I used to have it as well before I made these changes, that eating healthy not only meant, that it was going to be hard, but it also meant that it was going to be super time consuming. And I wasn't a cook and I didn't want to cook. And so, I had that mentality as well, that this has got to be hard and cooking has to take a ton of time. And it doesn't. Like, there's definitely ways, like, as with anything, there's a transition period and a learning period. But as with anything, there's ways to make it happen and there's ways to make it easy. And trust me when I say I have found all the secrets to making it easy. So listen, there's a couple tips that I have. And one is to cook a ton of vegetables on the weekend. And I mean a ton, because when you think about cooking like a head of broccoli, that's going to be gone in a day or less. So you have to like really stock up. Roast them, saute them, steam them, whatever it is. Get a variety, get 4 or 5 different vegetables, cook them all, mix them all up, add onions to it, add spices to it, do whatever you need to do. And then you have like a ton. Hey, you should come over here and join me for this one. Oh, do you? Well, I'm wrapping up in just a second, actually. So do whatever you have to do, and then you have a ton of vegetables that are available for your week. And then if you just undercook them a little bit, they're there. You can pull them out. You can put them as a side to any dish that you want, and you have your vegetables for the week. So that's one way to do it. Another way is to take a glance at your week and see what days are going to be the busiest days that you have. So let's say Wednesdays are crazy because you both have work, and then your kids have, activities in the evening, but y'all still need to eat somewhere between 5 and 6. And what are you going to do? Make that a crock pot day. So you're going to plan out a super easy crock pot meal. Thaw the meat the night before. Chop the vegetables ahead on the weekend and put them in a bag and stick them in the fridge. It's labeled crock pot. And then that morning, all you have to do is put everything into the crock pot and be ready for dinner whenever it is that your family can sit down and enjoy it. So that is 1 or 2 tips on saving time. There are some nice brands also that you can still get for snacks and things like that are pre-made, because everybody's like, oh, well, you never eat processed foods. And my rule with processed foods is if you look at the label and it's real food and it's ingredients that you could make at home if you had the time, then it's valid. I'm answering frequently asked questions.
We're representing Jocko Podcast today.
I know. So Jocko Willink, what's his podcast? Is it just Jocko Podcast?
Jocko Podcast.
Yeah. Discipline equals freedom. Jocko Podcast. So I'm answering frequently asked questions. So I answered, where do I start?
At the beginning.
What 2 nutritional changes are the most important? Which I said, eliminating gluten, greens, and increasing your vegetable intake are the 2 most drastic, things that you could see the most improvement with. Mm-hmm. And then I was talking about time and how you a big complaint I get is about time. And so I was talking about making your vegetables ahead of it. I said actually I think that's kind of more of a mental thing.
It is, and this is what I think. It's like if you don't have time, you have to make time. So you have to knock things out of your schedule that are sucking away from the things you want to do. So if you, for example, if you can't get up early because you stay and lie in bed for 3 hours and watch TV till 11 o'clock at night, then stop that. Go to bed at 9:30. Wake up.
Go stop that. Hi, Abigail.
Yeah, we'll wake up at 4:30 and get your food ready. I mean, it's just this.
Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions while we're talking.
You don't like that?
I love your perspective. Just do it.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, I think it's a really mental thing. I was pointing out the spending time on social media. If you look at your app, you're probably spending 3 or 4 hours a day. If you just reorganize your time, boom, there you have meal prep time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I was also saying, it doesn't actually have to be hard. How long do we actually spend cooking food?
I don't know if I can answer that because you do most of the cooking.
Well, but you have too. When I was gone. And
yeah, not much. If you have good recipes and you've shopped well, I mean,
I think
doesn't take long
what's interesting. So when I started getting into healthy eating, I thought it had to be hard. I thought, when you grow up and you have baking recipes, for example, baking is hard. Baking is like, oh, I can cook, but I can't bake because you have to measure, you have to weigh, you have all these flours on. Healthy whole food eating is not the same. It's the most simple recipes. And if you get a paleo whole foods dessert recipe, it's mix the dry ingredients, mix the wet ingredients, stick it in the oven. And it still turns out awesome. I mean, there's some for birthday cakes or whatever that are a little more complicated. But if you're talking about muffins and bread and things like that, it's the easiest stuff in the world. And really, what are all our dinners? They're different combinations of meat,
What did
vegetable, healthy
I
fat.
hear the other day? You have dinner for breakfast.
Yeah, dinner
Or
for
dinner
breakfast.
for all your
That
meals,
was in
so.
I think that was my Reed Davis podcast, which is coming out in 2 weeks, I think. But yeah, we were talking about foods to eat and getting out of the mentality of, oh, that's a great one. So another frequently asked question is like breakfast. So people ask about like, what do I eat for breakfast? Because all of a sudden, you know, all your pastries and your cereal and all this kind of stuff is gone. So what do I eat for breakfast? Well, you have to kind of get out of the mentality of there being foods for specific occasions. And you have to start getting into the mentality of there's food that's good for me and there's food that's not. And the food that's good for me is good for me at any point in the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, or snacks. So our breakfasts often look like dinner. Like the other day we had like
potato with ground beef and peppers.
That's what he had today. And the other day we had like a bison burger with sauerkraut and
spinach and
vegetables and yeah. So anything that's good for you for dinner is good for you for breakfast and vice versa. So when you're talking about keeping it simple, it's just like vegetables, healthy meats, and lots of healthy fats, and some fruit. All right, he just joined us for the entertainment portion in the last 5 minutes of this video. If you guys have other questions, drop them below, and I will do another video sometime next week. Happy Saturday!